Why haven't y'all tried American food yet? Like, for real, all jokes aside.
Bitch, I'm God, I'm the Alpha and Omega, I'm the ancient of the days, I'm the Rahman Rahim, and you don't know where I come, you don't know from where I came, all you know is I am one with many aspects, different names, then one day the thought formed into a word inside my brain, then I said let it be, then next thing I heard a bang, then I split up into infinite dimensions with a chain, now we're all interlinked, we are all one and the same.
I want to bring my brother to the stage right now. Ladies and gentlemen, gods and earths, my brother, Just Blaze.
Hey!
Oh!
Can you guys hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
I hear
Yeah.
you. Can you
Pardon
start on
me, I was trying to have a
mode?
much fresher setup, but because of the shoot that we're doing, everything is broken down, and I got back into the studio and I was like, oh shoot. So I have nothing set up, so I'm straight off the phone.
It's all good. Just give us a landscape if you could. If you give it, turn it to the side.
Oh, you want to see what's happening here? All right, hold on.
Just turn your phone to the side just so you fill out the screen. You know what I mean?
All right. Oh. I see what you're saying. Got you.
Yeah. Hey, there you go.
There you go.
Now later, if you want to give us a tour of the studio, that's up to you. But I'm just talking about landscape mode on your phone. What's good, my brother?
Digga, first name Rashia, Lord Jamar, God Allah, Derek X is on the flesh. And oh wait, you're here too.
And that's Godfrey. And I'm like, and that's Godfrey.
Hey, what up?
Godfrey in the place to be.
What up,
You didn't have nothing on whack.
In the phone. Hold on 1 second. Let me plug in the phone.
Wait, hold on.
All right.
Something paused.
No, it's an honor and a pleasure to be here with two people who I hold in high regard and someone that I consider an old friend.
Nice.
That old friend being Rod Digga.
Yeah, I'm about to say that would be me. Shit, we've actually had to like bunk in the studio together till Party and Bullshit was done. It's like this is like session number 9. I cannot leave the studio until this record is complete.
Right. One thing that I would say about that, I was thinking about this when I was on the way back to the crib while everything was being set up for what we had to do tomorrow, and I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, what's cool about my career is that I was able to do records with folks like Jay and Wayne and Drake and Mariah and everybody else. But I was able to also get to just hang out and really make my mark with folks like you or Joe.
Word.
And people, that looked like that came from where I came from, looked like what I look like. And that was really the dream come true for me. Ultimately.
That's what's up. I don't know. We just figured she'll be right back. Oh, here she is.
Uh-oh.
I'm sorry, that was some bullshit. Just as I was in the middle of being serenaded. I'm sorry.
I remember like the day I shot the video with Digga, I felt like, oh, I'm here now. Oh. Like I'm finally able to put the jersey stamp on something. The celebrities are coming to us as opposed to us going to them. If that makes sense.
That's a fact.
Like Swiss was there and a bunch of other people were there, and it was just every once in a while somebody will tweet me a picture from the video shoot, and I'm like, oh yeah, we did that.
Word up.
So you're from Paterson, New Jersey, yes?
Sir.
Now,
Proudly.
for those of y'all that don't know, Paterson is a pretty fucking rough city. I know Newark is fucking rough, but Paterson is pretty fucking hardcore, yes?
Yeah, I mean, especially at this point now, we might be worse off than Newark. I don't know.
I'm thinking you might be. I think you might be. Yeah, like the murder. All that type of
we might be neck and neck. Newark kind of crazy. But see, with Newark.
But that's nothing to brag about.
Yeah.
At all. At all.
There's a particular section of Newark, the streets with numbers, the number streets I would say is like the worst of Newark.
That's
But
funny
there's
because the first property that I ever bought was in Hoboken, and when I got it, it was already like the area was already kind of gentrified, right? And we're like, oh, this is great. You know, it's me and my wife and the kids and whatnot, and we're gonna be okay. And then a girl that I used to date when I was a kid, literally a kid, who also grew up in Hoboken, was like, you remember that this block was the block you didn't go past when you used to DJ out here? And I'm like, oh shit, you're right. Like for y'all, it was numbers. For us, it was or for Hoboken, I should say, it was any streets with presidential names. So once you got to Washington, Jefferson, anything like that, you didn't go past after a certain time.
Damn.
What was it like, young kid coming up in Paterson, you know, being exposed to hip hop? How'd you get into hip hop originally? How'd you go from just being a fan to becoming a participant?
Hold on. Before I tell that story, give me 1 second. Am I back?
Yeah, you're back. You're back.
If I had to start it out in a certain place, it would have to be at my Aunt Eleanor's house.
Whose house?
My Aunt Eleanor. Oh, rest in peace. 24th Street, 10th Ave, in Paterson. And we used to have a record store right around the corner, and my older cousin would always feed me the 12 inches after the album came out. So say Fat Boys came out, like back when they were the Disco 3.
Right.
Say Fantasy 3 Is Your Rock came out, or Crash Crew on the radio came out.
Wait, how old are you?
I'm relatively young. I'm 43.
Because I'm like, you kind of naming records that I feel like you almost shouldn't know about. What's that about?
That's why I'm friends with a lot of 60-year-olds. Because I know all this stuff that came.
Fantasy MCs. I'm like, how does he know that? This is my era he's talking about.
Right. So when those records came out, my cousin gave them to me when they got old. So for me, like Rock the Mic is based on Fantasy 3 Is Your Rock.
Wow.
But that sounds crazy, right? But think about it. If you go back and listen to Fantasy 3 and listen to
ding, 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 ding.
Nah, not that part.
It's hot. Because if you
the hi-hat.
Right.
That was taken from the instrumental of it.
Oh, wow.
Or the idea of it was. The version that started with the thunder bombs. With the
right.
It's all about boom, boom, cat, boom, 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 cat, boom, boom, cat, boom, boom, boom. So that's where it started for me. That record again, Crash Crew.
And I used to work with Dal C. Rest in peace, Dal C. He was the first one to ever like work with me.
Daryl passed away?
Yeah, a long time ago.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So you have that, and then my older cousin, his big sister, who we used to call Fluffy, her she had a rack system. Remember back in the 80s, they still had the rack systems where it was like a turntable, a radio, and cassette players or whatever. So she had one that had two turntables, and her little brother somehow rigged up a way to have two turntables play. So then they played. He played what was it? Thriller, but he played Beat It, which had the drum intro. So then it's boom, cat, boom, cat, boom, cat, boom, cat. But he had two copies. So he would play them back to back, like boom, boom, cat, cat, boom, boom, cat, cat, boom, boom, cat, cat. So imagine a 5-6-year-old kid doing that, having his dad play jazz organs, and my dad was very much into the CTI catalog. If anybody wants to go Google that, you can. So my dad is into the CTI fusion jazz stuff that's coming on. My cousin is playing me rap records, but then he's also playing me, hey, you can make 2 records play at the same time. And I'm just sitting, and then he's also hipping me to Mr. Magic and Marley Marl, and then a little bit later, Red Alert and Chuck Chillout.
Wow.
So all that's happening at the same time. Like one of my fondest childhood memories is I got chicken pox, which nobody would normally say is their fondest childhood memory. But when I had to stay at his mom's house for a week, or for I don't know, about 4 days, is when he played Me By All Means Necessary by krs-one. And at the same time, he had a dub tape. It was that, and I forget what was on the other side. But that, and even if the timelines don't necessarily coincide in terms of release, I heard that Salt and Pepper's answer to the show, the Showstopper, and Run DMC Raising Hell, all in the same 2-day span of being sick. So for me, that music got me through being sick, where I just sat in their house and played those tapes over and over and over. So between that, my dad being the musician that he was, my mom being a singer, him being an avid collector of hip hop records at that time because they were a novelty, and then my aunt being like, "Hey, here's the Earth, Wind, and Fire record. Here's the Isaac Hayes record. All that stuff that you're playing. Hey, check this out." So that's kind of where it landed for me. I had nothing else to do with my time.
And so did that lead you to being a DJ? You started
definitely led to me being a DJ. Him exposing me to Chuck, Red, Marley, Clark, Pete in the early days of the In Control show. That's so for me. It was initially DJ, and then from there, it led to me saying, okay, if we're playing this music, how do we make this music? And I was a very inquisitive kid, so then I wanted to start taking apart my dad's keyboards, taking apart, his work beeper, which I got in a lot of trouble for. Taking apart just anything that I could get my hands on to figure out how it did what it did. And that led me to trying to figure out how to take apart records to figure out how they were made. So you combine that with summer of, I think, 87 or 88, when I'm trying to figure out what Jazzy Jeff did on He's the DJ, I'm the Rapper. And I'm like, wait a minute. I have those records downstairs. How do I do what he did?
Right.
And then fast forward to 88 and 89, and my mom's James Brown records are being flipped by guys like you and Sadat and Puba. And I'm trying to figure all that out. That's what put me on the path.
So, I mean, drum machines and samplers and all that type of shit were not cheap. They're still not that cheap. Like, you know what I mean? They're getting cheaper. How were you privileged enough to get your first sampler or
funny enough, I never knew how
to it.
But funny enough, I never knew how until this past Christmas. My mom told me the story of how she bought me my first drum machine. When the whole fall and winter leading up to that point, all she was hearing from her 12-year-old boy was, "This is all I want. This is all I want." And she opened up a bunch of credit cards and got that done. I don't know that. I didn't know that until I was 43 years old.
You're 12 years old at this time.
Yes.
Now, are you a good student? Did you just
yeah, I was good. I was my grades were in the upper echelon.
okay?
Same thing with my aunt Jenny. Shout out to Aunt Jenny if she's watching. But she bought me my first ASR 10 because when Enter the Wu-Tang came out, because I'm tracing down every piece of information I can get. I find out that I think from rap pages that RZA made Into the Wu-Tang using an ASR 10. So now I need that. And she saved up her money and bought me that.
Wow.
Bought me an ASR 10. And that day I remember I was there for, like, when my mom got me the stuff that I was asking for Christmas when I was 12. Obviously I wasn't there for it. By the time you're like 15, 16, things a little bit different. Santa doesn't exist, and you're just like, hey, I need this is what I need. So Aunt Jenny went to or took me to Sam Ash, and she was like, hey, this Roland 760 is only $600. This ASR 10 is $2,500. Can we get the Roland instead? And I'm like, nope, because that's not what RZA uses. So for me, it was always trying to just have the same tools. And obviously, when you get home as a kid, you're thinking, oh, I'm going to make RZA beats now. And then you don't.
Right. And then you find out that the ASR 10 is probably one of the hardest drum machines to get the fucking drums right on. Like, oh my goodness. Like, I know people that used to fucking want to cry with that machine. I was always the MPC guy. But I fucked with some dudes that used the ASR 10.
Right.
And whoa.
No, so the ASR, once you mastered it, it was great. But the learning curve to understand that work environment was beyond hard. But once you got there, you could do some amazing things.
Right. Yeah. Whoa. So you started with the ASR. Wow. What'd you graduate to? What's your preference now?
I do everything on a laptop now. If you want to do a timeline, it was the ASR, and then I felt like one era that we touched on in the beginning but didn't really get into. Interning at the cutting room, thanks to NASA, was an experience that I don't think you could ever replicate. Like, I watched so many classic records get made. I watched Havoc make Hell on Earth. Not the song, the album.
Right.
I watched him make the next 3 Mobb Deep albums after that. I got to be there when Chucky Thompson reunited with Mary J. Blige after so many years and worked on her album. I got to watch all that happen. And the centerpiece of everything was the MPC. So,
which MPC?
Back then they were using the 3000. I couldn't afford a 3000, and at the time, the 60 was considered trash because the 360. Because the 3000 was out.
Right.
So I was able to get Vance Wright.
My God, come on, Vance Wright from Nerd Show. Shout out to Vance Wright.
I had Vance Wright's MPC.
You had his MPC 60?
That's what I learned on. When I got to this phase of professional beat making, I learned on Vance Wright's MPC.
Vance is a hell of a fucking beat maker, man. He's fucking dope. Like, he was. Yeah, I started with the 60, then the 62.
It actually.
Then I went to the 3.
Let me take that back. It was a 62.
It was a 62, right?
I had the Vance Wright 62.
Wow. And how did you feel at that time, knowing that, wow, this is Vance Wright? At that time, you probably was like, yo, this shit crazy. Like,
no, you know what? No, it wasn't. It was a way for me to get through what I was trying to do because I was so focused. And it wasn't until I let it go and sold it that I was like, damn.
I missed it.
Like, that was some history I just let go of.
Right.
Like,
and I wasn't really clear on history at that point. And what ended up happening for me was I still had my day job at the studio, at the cutting room downtown. And Arista had just bought the Profile Records catalog. Hopefully, obviously I don't have to spell out that catalog for you guys. But for anybody who's watching and doesn't understand, Profile Records was a very important label, throughout the 80s for us.
Run DMC, is
Profile.
probably
The Dane, and so many others. So at the studio, we were doing a lot of work for Profile, because they were still trying to figure their thing out. And then we were also doing work for Arista. So when Arista bought Profile, they're like, oh, we're buying their catalog. We need all these tapes verified. How about you guys just verify all the tapes and make sure that everything that they say that they're giving us is here? So then somebody from Arista calls like, hey, so does anybody there actually know the Profile catalog? And I'm like, I know that entire catalog by heart. From Here We Go to Nightmares and anything else beyond that. So then I got the opportunity to verify. I should say the opportunity. It was a job, and I got paid for it. But I had to verify that all the tapes that Profile said they were giving Arista were actually there, and that they were in sellable condition. So I had to go through all that. And there were a couple of tapes that weren't. We worked that out. But one of the really cool things about that was that's what led to me meeting Run DMC, and at the end of the day, meeting Jam Master Jay, who was also one of my childhood influences. But the reason I bring this whole situation up is because a lot of those Profile tapes, a lot of them actually weren't in good condition. They were well kept. A few of them weren't. But Run DMC realized they didn't have an instrumental to what was the Christmas film? Christmas in Hollis.
Ah.
They didn't have an instrumental. They needed somebody to recreate that instrumental.
Wow.
And it happened in the middle of the session. So they're like, you know this song? And I'm like, yeah, I performed this shit in 5th grade. So then I was tasked with recreating that instrumental for them to perform at the White House. And that's when I realized, the importance of holding on to your history, because there's so much of our history that isn't. So ever since then, I've always made it a point to anything that I do, anything that comes across my desk, anything that I can document, I do. And a lot of times it's just people can look at me as a hoarder, it doesn't matter. But if I have something that might be it's not even about monetary value, it's about cultural value.
Right.
That's what I'm going to hold on to it and make sure that I have it for somebody else to preserve, because so much of our culture is not passed on. We've contributed, I think, the most culture, us as people of color, we have contributed the most culture that has not been preserved. We have contributed the most musical culture that has not really been that is only passed down through, like, quote unquote legend. Like such and such and such and such. Like, how do we know about the Busy Bee and Kumo Diba?
Right. From the legend of it. Right. Yeah, from the tape. But where is that tape right now? I mean, I guess somebody.
Right, like, where's the actual tape? But like, thank God that somebody had the the wherewithal to record it and distribute it.